Okay, we're about to start with the first panel, which is on, what was it on? It's on new openings and continuing challenges in the dressing legacies of 1965. Of course I knew that, I just was testing you all. So we have three speakers. First speaker is Pipit Ambarmirah, who works for an organization called Kiprah Perempuan, which works with survivors of 1965. Second speaker is Vannessa Hearman. Where is Vannessa? Oh, there's Vannessa. She is, I think her PhD thesis was on 1965, now working in Charles Darwin University, right? Yes. Third speaker is Leila, who's a highly noted literary figure in Indonesia, and her novel Pulang has received accolades in Indonesia and internationally. And of all the three speakers that we have today, actually I have to say that the only one that I've known a very long time is Leila, to the point that I think I know her old boyfriends. But leaving those things aside, we'll start now with Pipit, who will talk about her work with Kiprah. Pipit will be speaking in Indonesian, and I will attempt to interpret. And if the interpretation is incorrect because of my creeping senility, then please feel free to rectify any mistakes that I make. Okay, so then, Pipit.
Terima kasih, Pak Dedi.
First mistake.
Maaf, selamat pagi semua. Maaf saya memakai bahasa Indonesia. Bahasa saya sangat buruk, pelajaran bahasa saya. Saya di sini akan bercerita tentang apa yang kami lakukan di Yogyakarta dengan ibu-ibu kiprah perempuan atau kiper. Jadi salah satu anggotanya juga ada di sini. Kiper ini adalah komunitas perempuan penyintas tragedi kemanusiaan tahun 1965 di Yogyakarta.
Okay, so the organization is in Yogyakarta and it works with survivors of 1965.
Anggotanya tidak hanya yang terlibat langsung. Terlibat langsung itu maksudnya adalah mereka yang sempat dipenjara ataupun yang wajib lapor, tapi juga tidak langsung. Jadi keluarganya.
So the members are not just those who are direct victims, meaning those who were arrested, incarcerated, but also the families of those who were the direct victims.
Selain para korban maupun keluarganya, juga ada simpatisan yang juga menjadi anggota Kiper. Mereka adalah orang-orang yang peduli dan punya simpati serta empati yang dalam dengan para penyintas ini.
Besides those kinds of members, there are also sympathizers who join Kiper because they sympathize with the plight of the members.
Kiper ini berdiri tahun 2006 dan itu diawali oleh ada pertemuan besar seperti Temu Rindu yang diadakan pertama kali di Yogyakarta di SMKI khususnya, pertemuan seluruh korban se-Jawa.
The first activity, Kiper was set up in 2006. Its first activity was to gather for a reunion, the survivors in Yogyakarta.
Ya. Dan dari pertemuan besar ini itu adalah pertemuan pertama kali antara para korban setelah mereka keluar dari penjara. Jadi itu adalah pertemuan pertama dan itu membuka membuka ruang mereka untuk berbagi cerita.
This is the first time that these individuals had gathered together after being released, and this opened up an opportunity for them to discuss their respective plights.
kemudian inilah yang ditangkap oleh Syarikat Indonesia, salah satu lembaga anak muda NU di Yogyakarta, yang kemudian dia menginisiasi untuk membentuk kelompok komunitas korban.
This then gained the attention of an organization called Syarikat Indonesia, Indonesian Union, which is a youth organization of the Nahdlatul Ulama. They became interested in the issues that put forward by Kiper.
Anggota Kiper ini ada di 4 kabupaten, yaitu ada di Kota Yogyakarta, Sleman, Bantul, dan Kulon Progo.
Kiper has activities in 4 districts of Yogyakarta. I probably don't need to name all of them.
Terus kemudian untuk anggota Kiper ini, maksudnya ibu-ibu yang menjadi anggota ini ada beberapa tipe, yaitu ada 3 tipe. Yang pertama itu ibu-ibu yang masih memiliki masalah dengan keluarga. Maksudnya adalah anggota Kiper ini ada ibu-ibu yang masih belum berterus terang tentang siapa dirinya atau apa yang pernah terjadi pada dirinya kepada orang lain maupun kepada keluarganya.
Among the members of Kiper are women who have not really acknowledged to others what has occurred, what happened to them and their families.
Terus untuk tipe yang kedua adalah ibu-ibu yang sudah berani tapi masih takut untuk berbicara. Masih takut berbicara di sini maksudnya misalnya seperti Ibu Katmi ini, dia sudah berani untuk bicara di depan umum seperti ini. Tapi kalau di anggota Kiper masih ada yang dia mau datang ke perkumpulan Kiper, tapi dia tidak mau bicara keluar tentang apa yang terjadi pada dirinya.
Other members are women who acknowledge within Kiper what has befallen their families, but are disinclined to talk about these in the public arena.
Dan yang ketiga adalah ibu-ibu yang sudah berani untuk bicara di depan umum, bahkan kemudian di sini kita sebutnya penyintas, berani menyuarakan kekerasan yang dia alami dan juga menjadi motivasi mengajak ibu-ibu yang lain untuk berani juga untuk bersuara dan sadar akan hak mereka.
A third category are women survivors who not only acknowledge what has occurred to them in their lives, but also encourage others to speak out and to put this out in the discussion in the public arena.
Kegiatan rutin ibu-ibu ini setiap 2 bulan sekali mereka akan ada pertemuan di minggu ketiga dan di hari Minggu.
Okay, they have bi-monthly activities. Was it every
minggu ketiga di hari Minggu?
Every third week on a Sunday. Okay. I should know that. I got it.
Ada 5 kegiatan dari ibu-ibu ini. Ada kegiatan rutin yang setiap 2 bulan sekali itu adalah ada arisan, kemudian apa ya arisan?
What is arisan? We'll just say arisan.
Kemudian ada simpan pinjam. Ketiga ada barter ekonomi. Barter ekonomi ini adalah ibu-ibu membawa barang-barang kerajinan buatan mereka sendiri di pertemuan ini, juga membawa ada barang-barang kerajinan, ada juga snack. Jadi ketika pertemuan mereka barter, menjual barang-barang itu di antara anggota yang lain.
So basically they combine social activities with economic activities. So the social activity is what in Indonesia we call arisan, and during these arisan meetings they also are able to barter things that they produce to each other, and also it's an arena in which mechanisms of internal borrowing and loans and those sorts of things happen in between members.
Ya. Terus kemudian yang keempat adalah pemeriksaan kesehatan. Jadi pemeriksaan kesehatan sederhana. Di antara ibu-ibu komunitas Kiper ini, ada satu penyintas yang dulu dia adalah mahasiswa kedokteran UGM tingkat 3, tapi karena dia dianggap terlibat gerwani PKI, jadi dia di DO. Dan kemudian dialah yang menjadi dokter kami, dokter di komunitas itu. Jadi setiap kita datang pertemuan 2 bulan sekali, dia akan membawa tensi untuk menensi semua ibu-ibu, dan itu menjadi sarana untuk saling bertukar, karena dia kemudian bisa ngecek, oh ibu ini kolesterolnya tinggi, tingginya tinggi, dan kita saling sharing, ibu jangan makan ini, jangan makan itu.
They also have medical checkups. Yeah, medical checkups. So there's a member who used to be in the medical faculty but was not able to graduate, and so this member would give free medical checkups to the members of the organization and tell them what they should eat and not eat. Which I don't like.
Karena mereka sudah tua. Oke. Kemudian yang kelima adalah anjang kasih. Jadi untuk membangun solidaritas di antara anggota, mereka akan bergantian mengunjungi ke rumah masing-masing korban, apalagi terutama untuk yang sedang sakit, karena saat ini sudah banyak berkurang anggotanya karena usia, mereka sudah tidak memungkinkan lagi untuk datang ke pertemuan 2 bulanan.
Okay, so there are sort of solidarity making activities whereby they visit members who are elderly or are ill and who are no longer able to participate in the meetings.
Dan yang terakhir yaitu kegiatan budaya. Jadi anggota KIPER ini ternyata mempunyai bakat-bakat yang luar biasa. Ibu-ibu ini ada yang bisa menyanyi keroncong. Kemudian karena dulu beliau adalah di zaman 60-an penyanyi terkenal keroncong dan sering bolak-balik Jogja Jakarta. Dia sempat menyanyi di depan petinggi-petinggi waktu itu, dan juga pemain teater dan drama seperti Bu Katmi ini, kan sekarang jarang orang yang bisa nembang bahasa Jawa. Terus itu dulu aja.
So they also have cultural activities because some of their members are artistically talented. There is a member who was actually a well-known keroncong singer in the 60s. And they also have members who are actually renowned theatre performers.
Ini salah satu kegiatan KIPER yang dibantu oleh Ajar tadi, self healing untuk mereka. Jadi tadi tentang batu dan bunga di gambar yang paling atas, tentang keadilan apa yang mereka rasakan.
Okay, so whatever Dodi said before.
Di sini salah satu yang sangat berdampak sekali dengan korban adalah bagaimana mereka bisa berbagi cerita pengalaman di masa lalu, kemudian strategi bertahan hidup dan apa sebetulnya harapan-harapan ke depannya. Mereka juga belajar juga untuk mendokumentasikan setiap apa yang mereka lakukan sebagai warisan nantinya.
Okay, so there are self-healing activities whereby they talk about their experiences in the past and about their strategies of survival and their future hopes, and they try to document the entire process of self-healing.
Dengan ada bantuan dari teman-teman yang lain selain secara internal KIPER, kita menyebutnya keluar dari tempurung. Jadi selama ini sebelum tahun 2014, KIPER lebih berkutat dengan kegiatan internal, menguatkan diri sendiri, tidak pernah keluar.
So there are activities which you might call out of the shell. Yeah, best I can come up with. Out of the shell, where after doing all of this internal consolidation, they will bring their activities to the public.
Ya. Kemudian mulai 2014 kita mulai berani untuk ke pemerintah. Jadi kita advokasi ke pemerintah, datang ke pemerintah, ibu-ibu datang ke pemerintah, menanyakan program-program yang pemerintah punya untuk mereka, khususnya untuk yang lansia, adakah yang bisa mereka akses. Dan ketika mereka datang ke pemerintah lokal, ya di pemerintah lokal masing-masing, mereka menyebutkan bahwa mereka korban 65.
From 2014, they've been trying to engage local governments to try to get assistance for the aged members of the organization. And when they do so, they say that they are victims of 1965.
Ini foto-foto kegiatan ketika bertemu Bupati, Wakil Bupati di Gunung Kidul yang pojok atas. Kalau yang ini ketemu dengan Bupati Kulon Progo. Jadi dengan pemimpin-pemimpin daerah maupun yang sebelahnya itu dengan dinas-dinas sosial dan juga bertemu juga dengan DKM Hemas yang dianggap junjungan bagi warga Kota Jogja.
Okay, so these are pictures of the meetings with the local officials of the different districts.
Selain itu, ibu-ibu ini juga aktif, bisa juga ikut demo. Oke. Ibu-ibu ini juga bisa aktif ikut demo. Di sebelah itu mereka ikut acara Kamisan ketika datang ke Jakarta. Kemudian ini pentas teater kita, jadi kita sering pentas, beberapa kali sudah pentas. Ini ketika ada bienal, jadi ada bienal Yogyakarta. Ibu juga mengisi di sini. Kemudian yang sebelah sini adalah diskusi-diskusi dengan mahasiswa. Jadi sekarang ini banyak mahasiswa-mahasiswa fakultas ini Visipol yang mengundang kiper untuk bercerita apa yang mereka alami.
So the members are now willing to engage in public demonstrations as well. And here's a picture of them in a public demonstration. Here's a picture of a theatre performance. There's a picture of them being involved in the Yogyakarta Biennale, and also there's a picture of them being involved in discussions with students. They often get invited to speak to students now.
Can I interject there? That picture, itu yang Kamisan itu, that's in front of Palace every Thursday.
Oh, is it in front of the palace?
Yeah, it's a Kamisan. It means that it's a demonstration in front of the palace in Jakarta.
In Jakarta?
In front of the
oh,
palace,
yes,
yeah.
yes, that's right.
So,
Yes.
yeah.
Oke. Nah, inilah kondisi Yogyakarta saat ini, penuh dengan spanduk-spanduk kebencian terhadap kami yang dianggap komunis.
These are banners which express anti-communist sentiments. So these are the banners that are put up by people who are against the activities.
Ya.
Some of them say, witness the barbarity of the September 30th movement, the anti-communist generation guards the national unitary state of Indonesia, so you get the idea.
Spanduk-spanduk ini biasanya, kita sudah biasa sebetulnya melihat spanduk ini. Biasanya ini terpasang ketika bulan September dan Oktober. Tapi ada spesial kondisi. Jadi mulai ada spanduk ini belum terpasang, bahkan malah bertambah ketika mulai IPT, rame IPT, itu banyak sekali spanduk di sepanjang jalan-jalan strategis seluruh Yogyakarta.
So they've been used to seeing this thing, but there's been more of it since the what's the IPT? International Tribunal thingy. Yeah.
Begitu juga ketika simposium ramai dibicarakan, itu juga sama, semakin bertambah juga spanduk-spanduk ini.
Since the symposium as well, which was held earlier this year about 1965, there've been more of these banners that have been put up.
Ya, dan ini membuat beberapa anggota kiper takut untuk
and this has
berkumpul
created
kembali
fear amongst the
tiap 2
members
bulanan.
to be involved in their bi-monthly meetings.
Ya. Tapi dengan adanya IPT dan simposium itu, banyak beberapa angin segar seperti tadi yang saya ceritakan. Kemudian banyak generasi muda yang mulai mau tahu dan bertanya kepada kami sebetulnya apa yang terjadi di tahun 65. Jadi dia mengundang salah satu ibu untuk bercerita dan di situ terjadi diskusi.
Yeah, but in spite of this climate of fear, there've been positive developments. For example, young people have been more inclined to come around and ask members about what really happened in 1965.
Ya. Bahkan kemudian mereka juga mulai melakukan tidak hanya di Jakarta, Kamisan, di Jogja juga sudah mulai ada Kamisan. Setiap hari Kamis juga ini adalah Kamisan di depan kampus UGM, depan bundaran UGM.
So those demonstrations which occur in front of the palace in Jakarta every Thursday, now they're also occurring in Yogyakarta. This is in front of Gajah Mada University, Jakarta.
Oke, sudah.
Jadi
Kiper bisa bertahan sampai sekarang. Mayoritas komunitas korban 65 di Yogyakarta bisa bertahan sampai sekarang karena mereka merasa tidak sendiri. Jadi mereka banyak teman-teman yang tidak ada hubungan apapun dengan tahun 65, bahkan bukan keluarga, tapi mereka bersimpati dan berempati dan mencoba membantu menguatkan ibu-ibu ini, anggota Kiper, untuk terus bertahan dan menceritakan kebenaran yang selama ini terus dibungkam. Demikian juga dan selain itu kita juga dibantu oleh para muda-muda, generasi muda, kebanyakan mahasiswa yang menjadi relawan kami.
So basically they no longer feel alone. They feel that there is public support and that people are more interested now in what they do and that there are more and more young volunteers willing to assist in what they do.
Oke. Terima kasih. Mungkin nanti saya mau memutarkan sekarang film sebentar untuk mengenal lebih dekat tentang ibu-ibu Kiper. Bekerja sama juga dengan KKPK. Bagaimana Pak Cid? Filmnya.
Pipit also said before that Bukatmi is a member of Kiper.
Iya.
Yeah.
Oke.
Sorry.
Iya. Betul. Bukatmi adalah salah satu anggota Kiper.
Ibu Katmi was a theater performer.
Yang tipe ketiga.
Yeah.
Tadi ada 3 tipe kan? Ibu-ibu yang menjadi penyintas, kemudian dia menjadi motivator bagi semuanya. Ya.
Active in encouraging other members to take their experiences to the public discourse.
Ya. Aku pakai flash disk.
You should close the video now.
Ini YouTube ya.
Semula saya yakin kesadaran sejarah yang benar akan terwujud karena dunia tidak akan membiarkan kebohongan terus-menerus. Sang penguasa pun tidak mampu membendung kebenaran sejarah itu. hitungannya 71 sampai 76. Ke Minggu Semarangnya 76 bulan Oktober. Lalu bulan September tanggal 78 aku bebas. Pantulan ini begini. Ini blok F, ini blok E. Nyaman, karena memang dipersiapkan, dibuat nyaman. Penampilan itu jangan seperti orang terpenjara gitu. Ini kan dibuat, jadi kan ada sebenarnya ada gejolak apa, ada keresahan apa di dalam itu kan, ya tetap ada namanya yang saja takut. Tapi kan pemerintah misinya orang dibawa ke situ itu menghilangkan image tahanan penjara dari kita. Ini juga dulu dia berantem. Hidup sendiri saya.
Okay, sorry to interrupt your viewing, but we have, because of time constraints, we have to continue with the next speaker. Maybe we can put this on during the tea break, yeah? Or during lunchtime, okay? So that we can be fairly scheduled. So the next speaker is Vannessa, Hearman. Yes, there you are.
Okay, thank you very much, everyone. Thank you to the Herb Feith Foundation, to Kate, Gemma and Jinsel for bringing me to Melbourne all the way from Darwin, from Charles Darwin University, where I've just relocated a couple of months ago. Okay, so I want to talk about the June 2016 military-dominated symposium titled "To Safeguard the Pancasila from the Threat of Other Ideologies," which took place over 2 days in Jakarta. The symposium involved those usually associated with anti-communism in Indonesia, including the military and a range of Islamic groups. Can you hear me? Is that, am I okay? Yeah. Not very. I haven't got a mic, sorry. Do you mind closing that door? Sorry. Okay, in this paper, I will examine the symposium based on a study of the speeches and format of the symposium. And this work, I want to acknowledge, represents a preliminary study of Indonesia's current wave of anti-communism, and it's situated within a rich body of scholarly works by Ariel Herianto, Budiawan Purwadi and Kate McGregor on the lingering legacies of the New Order's anti-communism and how those legacies are expressed today. I argue that fighting communism and the now defunct Indonesian Communist Party serves a larger political agenda for turning back the clock to aspects of political arrangements under the New Order. This turn back, which I can't put this mic on properly, it's a bit too high-tech, this university. Certainly not like mine, okay. Okay, it's a different class altogether. All right, okay, I think I'm there. very futuristic for those listening on the live stream. Okay, so I argue that fighting anti-communism and the now defunct Indonesian Communist Party, PKI, serves a larger political agenda for turning back the clock to aspects of political arrangements under the new order. This turn back is sold as a campaign to strengthen the nation against external and internal threats, and which shall be based on the Pancasila as state ideology as interpreted by the military. What I mean by turning back the clock to political arrangements under the new order are the following: restoring the primacy of the military as the chief political and security actors in Indonesia, returning the People's Consultative Assembly, the MPR, to its previously powerful political role, and amending the constitution to explicitly identify the Pancasila as the state ideology and the implications of that, such as the punishment or castigation of people who are seen to have veered away from the Pancasila. So closing the door on accountability for 1965 is one objective, but overall the aim is to restore new order power structures, with the military acting as organiser and mobiliser of the people to fight certain enemies and wars, ostensibly in order to preserve the unitary state of the Republic of Indonesia and to safeguard the Pancasila. The military will serve again as the nation's saviour, like it did in 1965. This is certainly the line that's been presented. Since early this year, military officers such as Kiflan Zen and TNI Chief Gatot Nurmantio argued that there are those who are engaged in a proxy war against Indonesia. These have ranged from Indonesians of a lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender community to communists. Defence Minister Riamizat Riakudu launched a Bela Negara or State Defence Program, which began training about 4,000 people in June 2016. The training program, according to the head of training for the Ministry of Defence, Major General Hardin Azrin, seems to be a mixture of ideological indoctrination about how to love one's country and ideas about the Pancasila, as well as preliminary training in physical defence exercises. This is the context of the symposium, and the symposium shouldn't merely be seen as one that aimed to only deal with 1965. And here I also acknowledge somebody who's been researching military politics, Batara Ibnu Reza, who wrote for the podcast Indonesia at Melbourne, that Bela Negara is really just a thinly veiled militarisation of Indonesian society. The symposium shows that anti-communist forces, including those in military circles and right-wing groups such as the Defenders of Islam Front, the FPI, continue to be well organised and tap into the legacies of New Order anti-communist ideology. In carefully sifting through the speeches made throughout the 2 days, those given by military figures show that there is an agenda here of rolling back the gains of reformasi, such as those reforms that curtail the power of the MPR and liberalising freedom of speech. A return to Pancasila indoctrination courses, as well as paramilitary groups being set up supposedly to defend the state, are also explicitly and implicitly discussed in the symposium. Military involvement was very much in evidence. Retired General Kiki Shanakri was head of the organising committee. Former Vice President and another former military heavyweight, Tri Sutrisno, gave a keynote speech, and Defence Minister Riamizat Riakudu also spoke. Older retired military officers such as Saidiman Suryo Hadiprojo, former governor of the Lemhanas, the National Resilience Institute, were also present as historical witnesses. And I want to look here at the military role, the contents of the speeches of those associated with the military, as well as the role of historical eyewitnesses. Aside from the military, religious groups, including major ones such as the Nahdlatul Ulama, the Majelis Ulama Indonesia, the Indonesian Ulama Council, the FPI, and Muhammadiyah were all involved. Academic historians such as Aminuddin Kasti from the Surabaya State University also attended, playing the role also of historical eyewitness. A key element of this symposium was the involvement of historical eyewitnesses who were there to testify about the cruelty of the PKI they had witnessed and experienced in the past, supposedly. The contents of the symposium relied on the well-worn juxtaposition of Pancasila on one hand and communism on the other, as well as religion and communism. Speakers argued that, like in 1965, the Pancasila was under threat from a PKI comeback. However, the symposium speakers went further than just to attack communism, but targeted other supposedly Western ideals such as liberalism, secularism, and socialism, arguing that those were alien to Indonesia and intended to undermine the unity of the country. This kind of speeches appealed to groups like the Defenders of Islam Front, represented by its leader Habib Rizik, here in this image here that you can see, and the Indonesian Ulama Council. According to Kiki Shanakri in his opening remarks, there was a hegemonic global anti-Pancasila threat, and it was important to safeguard the Pancasila from this threat. He said there were a number of attempts to revive the PKI despite a history of rebellions in 1948 and 1965. He blamed unarmed forces that wanted to destroy Indonesia as being responsible for spreading such alien ideologies such as liberalism and socialism, and that human rights had become the issue used to promote these ideologies. He said there were proxies of the same skin colour as the audience who were engaged in a war against the unitary state and the Pancasila. Tri Sutrisno, as keynote speaker, echoed some of these concerns. He argued the situation was now an emergency, with the PKI having organised congresses 3 times already since its suppression in 1965. It's a bit unclear what he was referring to. He didn't go on to explain when and where these congresses were supposed to have taken place. He argued that former political prisoners have now been accepted as full citizens of Indonesia, that this was now enough. But to condone the coup attempt the PKI organised, which an apology would, he argued, would do such a thing, he said that that was going too far because it would be forgiving treason against the state. Sutrisno's speech appeals to anti-foreign sentiments held by groups like the FPI, as well as the discontentment arising from globalisation in Indonesia. In a strange attack on the US and on communism simultaneously, in the same breath, he remarked that the people, the rakyat of late, it's very interesting when a military officer uses the concept of rakyat rather than warga or penduduk, which rakyat is very class-laden and wouldn't have been used probably under the new order so much by military officers. He remarked that the rakyat of late merely suffer. They're being left out and sidelined. Rakyat hanya pelengkap penderitaan, was what he said. Ian Wilson, in his recent presentation at the Understanding Indonesia conference at CDU that was held in June, he referred to his interviews with members of urban groups like the FPI who blamed Indonesian middle and upper classes for vice and sin, and by extension for the entry of external ideologies into Indonesia. Wilson argues that these disenfranchised young men and those on the margins of society, such as becak drivers and petty traders, those working in the informal sector, are those who are becoming attracted to joining groups like the FPI based on their sense of being excluded from mainstream society. Representatives from the larger religious organisations at this symposium, such as Muhammadiyah and Nahdlatul Ulama, didn't seek to contribute anything new to this discussion away from the line that was already set out by the military officers, former military officers who were there, other than to reinforce the incompatibility of Islam with communism and other leftist ideologies. The Minister for Defence, Sri Amizar Riyakudu, Jokowi's appointee, continued on the theme of foreign ideologies and the survival of the Republic of Indonesia on day 2. He said there were new threats in all forms coming from within and without, including through cyber warfare and terrorism. Therefore, what the country needed was a clear nationalist outlook and a defence strategy that was inherently Indonesian, consisting of what he called smart power, a combination of soft power and hard power, founded on total people's war. It was for this reason that the TNI and others, he said, initiated the state defence policy last year. Indonesia was fighting a series of proxy wars, he argued, consisting of infiltration, exploitation, and the politics of divide and rule, which will end in civil war if it was not stopped by the TNI. The choice was between Pancasila or liberalism, socialism, and communism. And I think the prominent intervention of these men demonstrates clearly the military's involvement and heavy investment in the symposium, in organising it and in running the symposium. How much time do I have, Eddie? Okay, just keep it going. The symposium. 4 minutes. Yes. Okay. Okay, I now want to turn to the role of academic historians and to comment a little bit on historical eyewitnesses. This symposium took advantage, I argue, of the broader lack of historical awareness in Indonesia to promote certain views. This is particularly prevalent, ironically, among the academic historians Aminuddin Kasdi and Ahmad Mansur Suryanegara from Pajajaran University. Despite the audience's ignorance, itself a product of the New Order's strong influence over the history curriculum for decades, which Kate McGregor and others have analysed. I think that Indonesians respect direct personal experience and historical insights yielded by such experiences. In light of this, the organisers of the symposium presented a number of historical eyewitnesses. I've got a section here talking about Ahmad Mansur Suryanagara. I won't have time to talk in detail about him, but people should definitely check him out and his work. Very interesting. I'll talk about the other historian, which is Pak Aminuddin Kasti, or Pak Amin. Pak Aminuddin Kasti is the leading anti-communist from East Java and a historian at the State University in that city. He has written several books attacking the PKI, including one on land reform in the 1960s. Ruling out an apology or reconciliation on the basis of truth-telling, Amin repeated assertions regarding the PKI's provocative behaviour leading to the 1965 coup attempt. And in this, he cites cases such as land disputes, in particular in Jengkol, in Kanigoro, and various parts of the Chudori Regency in East Java, and so on. And this is something that historian at LIPI, Asfi Warman Adam, is actually looking into to try and counter some of these arguments that the PKI was engaging in violence and was getting ready to overthrow the state. So from that point of view, the work of Asfi is really well worth looking at and really supporting in terms of these initiatives, because these episodes are recounted over and over again by anti-communist scholars and activists to say that this is the reason why the PKI should not be allowed to be, reawakened or refounded. Okay, so Amin promoted the view that it was the masses' anger with the PKI's coup attempt that led to the killings. At this point, he then shifted to claiming his status as historical actor in 1965, when, as a local Ansar leader in East Java, he met with the military for directions on how to respond to the events in Jakarta. And I won't go into detail of how Amin tried to justify the repression operations as something that was carried out in an orderly and lawful fashion at the time to suppress a coup attempt, because that's in the section of this paper that I'll cut out because of time. Okay. In this symposium, historical eyewitnesses were presented as key protagonists and important actors, men such as Burhan Kampa, a self-confessed killer from Yogyakarta, who also spoke at the symposium and made loud threats. Kalau tidak bisa dibina, lebih baik dibinasakan, and such threats. On one hand, this reliance on supposedly first-hand experience indicates the weakness. Sorry, this. On one hand, this reliance on supposedly first-hand experience indicates the weakness of New Order propaganda, the need to convince people based on first-hand experience. But on the other hand, the presence of these eyewitnesses also exploits the audience's general ignorance about history and historical method, relying on the layperson's belief that those who were there have the greatest knowledge to bring to bear on the issues, no matter how false or distorted these recollections might have been. Historical eyewitnesses have been deployed where it's necessary to recall instances of PKI cruelty. But what happens when, like the Holocaust's survivors, this generation passes on? While their task will be made harder by the absence of these historical protagonists in the long run, the TNI is institutionally invested in this battle for history, as so are the Islamic groups who believe that communism, Western ideology, has no place in Indonesian society. Therefore, these forces will continue to deploy these memories as if the protagonist was still alive. And in conclusion, the rise of groups like the Gerakan Bela Negara in 2015 to support the TNI state defence efforts, and many of the speeches at this symposium can be easily dismissed as unimportant, involving the usual figures of anti-communism, such as anti-communist poet Taufik Ismail, historian Aminuddin Kasti, and his colleague Arokat Jaswadi. However, the military success in promoting anti-communist ideas and the continuing influence of New Order ideology can be seen in the rise of new ad hoc anti-communist groups in the smaller regional areas. The involvement of young people in economically disadvantaged areas in large cities and in the small towns, and the threats of violence, makes this latest resurgence difficult to dismiss. In examining the rhetoric of this military-run symposium, this New Order ideology is being re-articulated by the speakers, in particular those from the military. While out of the 9 recommendations, the symposium regretted the loss of life arising out of the suppression of the 1965 coup attempt and praised the restoration of full citizenship rights to former political prisoners and their descendants, it also demanded that the state and other parties do not reopen the 1965 case. But closing the door on accountability for 1965 is only one small element of what the military chiefs want. Overall, I think there is a larger goal on the agenda of rolling back certain reforms and re-strengthening the TNI. By relying on anti-Western sentiment among its allies, the military hopes to mobilise a xenophobic, conservative and disenfranchised network of allies, some of whom are only too ready to recycle past justifications for their organisation's involvement in the killings and to re-partner with the military. This is a small step towards gaining a broader popular acceptance for a return to a security-dominated agenda. It's hard to see a return to Pancasila education as being anything but the military again controlling indoctrination programs in Indonesia. There would be nothing new or creative in the way Pancasila was promoted, other than, like in the past, as a tool to muzzle dissent and differing opinions. The military, the institution that has promoted anti-communism consistently over the course of the New Order regime and beyond, is not concerned so much about 1965 and state accountability, knowing these to be a remote prospect under this government, but sees concern about communism and government representative statements about 1965 recently as an opportunity to promote a more far-reaching agenda to regain its prominent and valued status in society. Thank you.
Thank you. No, sekalian. Our next speaker is Leila Chudori. Just as this is being set up, just to quickly introduce, Leila will be talking about the novel Pulang, which is about the Indonesian exiles in Europe. It's been translated as Home in English. It's been translated to various languages, and so the novel is about the strategies of survival of the communist exiles in Europe, but also the children of the exiles as they try to return to Indonesia and to be part of Indonesia again.
Thank you, Fedi, for your controversial introduction before. Yeah, my presentation, the last one from this session is going to be the very light presentation. It's only talking about the responses, but before I start talking about how the international arena respond to Pulang, I should start a little bit on Indonesian response, because that then it will lead to the international response. What do you? Turun. Okay. So Pulang, thank you. Pulang was launched in Jakarta, December 2012 in Gute. It was 6 years of research and writing, and it was that year 2012, preceding to the launching of Pulang. It happens. I think it was a coincidence that year there were several other work. There was Joshua Oppenheimer's act of killing in August in Toronto, and then it became the top everywhere. And then Tempo was inspired by this movie, and then we made a special edition of September issue. The inspiration was that we also interviewed the perpetrator of Java and Bali, and that also caused a lot of uproar. We were not attacked, but there was a demonstration to Tempo office, so we had to make nice with the NO people. And after that, Amba from Laksmi Pamuncak was launched in October, and then afterwards Pulang was launched in December. So it just happens that that year there were a lot of work on 65 that were introduced to the public. So I think the reason why I have to mention this because I have written several books before this, and usually after I publish it, Gramedia publish it, and then the reprint would be the next year. Like first reprint was 2009, Nadira, and then the next reprint was after 1 year. But it happens that for Pulang, after it was launched in December, and after 2 weeks, it came to the second reprint, and then in January, after 1 month, it was the third reprint. So it was welcomed by public, I think. And then I went around Bandung, Bogor, Yogyakarta, Solo. And then to me, the very interesting part, and then this will relate also to high schools in America, that apparently high school students also read Pulang. I thought that this should be for students or young people who are 21 years old onwards, adults. But then apparently students in Yogyakarta and Solo who are still 17 and 18, which I consider the most difficult segment, because they're millennial groups. They're more interested in their gadgets rather than reading a book. And even if they read a book, usually it has to be dystopian, like, you know, I can't remember the movie, but anyway, it has to be either chick lit or, you know, popular kind. So it's very difficult to make young people to read. So it was very interesting to see the high school students who came up to me, and they, you know, they said that this is the window for them to start reading Pak Pramudia's work and other work that talk about 65. Yeah. So it was just right away. Pulang was in a process of translation by John McLean. Maybe some of you would know John McLean was started Lontar Foundation 30 years ago, and then I was signed by Pontas Literary Agent. That's a literary agent that also signed Pak Pramudia and also Eka Kurniawan now. So and then it was assigned for other publisher in 5 other languages: Dutch, German, Italian, and French. I want to make a division of the readers abroad because the Pulang was translated into 5 languages. First, I think by geographic and that has historical relation with Indonesia. I think the very first countries that respond very fast with Pulang was Australia, Malaysia, and Holland. And I think Australia and Malaysia because geographically we're close. And then Holland because it's historical relation. What I meant that these 3 countries respond the fastest because Pulang was not even out as home yet. Like it's still in a progress of translation. You know, it was out in 2015, but I was already invited to Australia and then to Malaysia and also to Holland to talk about Pulang because a lot of the academics, scholars have read the Pulang in Bahasa Indonesia, and they asked me to read Pulang in Bahasa in English. So I had to bring 3 chapters that have been translated by John McLean. So these are the countries that were very, very interested, and I even went to 2 festivals, and you know the book is not out yet in English, so you know I had to explain that, you know, this is coming out in 2015, and so we had to make a sort of like a small teaser, you know, 3 chapters of Pulang in English. And the rest of the setting, it's usually bookstores, let's show it here, yeah. Art galleries, museum in America. I went. They asked me to talk in a museum because it's an Asian Museum, and then apparently they have a book club there. And I also talk in cinemas in Texas because they put on Joshua Oppenheimer's movies, and afterwards they talk about my book. And then also these are what I call the pembaca umum, general readers, which means that before I start talking about the book, I had to introduce what Indonesia is, all these 17,000 islands, and, because, no, it's interesting because they are readers who were interested in reading Pulang because of recommendations or reviews, like they didn't know Indonesia at all. So it's very different from Australian readers or Dutch readers or Malaysian readers. Yeah, they read recommendations or reviews from The Economist or from Financial Times or whatever. For a lot of them read from The Economist, and they want to know. And a lot of these readers haven't been to Indonesia. They don't know how Bahasa Indonesia sound like, so they asked me to read in Bahasa Indonesia because they want to hear how Bahasa Indonesia sound like. Okay. Fedi already told me I only have 4 minutes. Now, this is, I think this is the peak of the whole thing of my tour for 3 years. Frankfurt Book Fair, do I have to introduce what Frankfurt Book Fair is? The biggest book fair in the world. It's been 100 years, and Indonesia was chosen as the guest of honor last year, 2015. So when I said peak, it's because 2015 was the 50th year of 65 tragedy. So I'm sure that all of you remember that throughout the whole year there were a lot of symposiums, seminars, remembrance of the 65 tragedy all over the world, not only in Australia but also in Holland, in Germany, in Switzerland, all over the place. And in my opinion, that was the year where a lot of people became very defensive, very oversensitive about, about 65. So in Frankfurt Book Fair, there were 200 Indonesians who were brought by the committee, the Indonesian government committee, to attend this book fair, and we had hundreds of panels. Like 65 was not the only theme, to answer your question yesterday, because some people said, why is it 65 again? No, 65 is only one of the one of the themes that we talk about. But it's true that during this panel, it was really fully packed. It was really heated, and of course, the Taufik Ismail was there too because he was also invited, and I think it was a very heated but civilized banter. I wish that I had the film there, but anyway, you can see it in YouTube. Because it's again the question about reconciliation, whether you just go straight to reconciliation like how General Agus Wijoyo talked in the symposium, or do we have to go through all the steps of, telling the truth and investigation, and then until the end it's reconciliation. So I was explaining that, we have to go through that. And otherwise that all the massacres are going to happen and happen again without punishment. So this is all the typical questions that I went through during my tour in Europe, United States, Australia. Yeah, it's always about, have you seen act of killing? Why did you write this? Or why is it France? Why not Netherlands? And did you have any problems? And these are the typical questions from the scholars. Yeah. And these are the typical questions from high schools. I was invited to several high schools. Private has really interesting because they have a subject called world literature, and usually it's South American work. The only Asian work that they read was Haruki Murakami, so that was quite flattering that they decided to read Pulang Home as the book that they had to read. Okay, and these are from the Malaysian and Indonesian book discussions. What? It's actually, I'm sure you're laughing about the second question.
Third.
Oh, third. Oh, yeah.
Steven Spielberg is.
No, the third one. It's why the female characters. Yeah. Well, the answer was yes. Yeah. So, and these are the media coverage. You can just take a look. Okay. So basically, what I found is that, well, of course, it's very flattering and interesting to find a lot of scholars, study about Pulang, and there's a lot of question. Actually, I just got an email. I was telling you that Professor Anthony Reed just, wrote me an email that, saya sudah baca Pulang, and I'm also writing a novel. So can we talk when you arrive in Canberra? And I was like, no, I'm the one who's going to learn from you. You're the historian. So
He's never written a novel.
He's writing a novel. He said, yeah. So it's very flattering. It's really humbling for me to be read and to be discussed by scholars. But I personally think that the most interesting thing from all the responses are always from the young high school people. One of the reasons why I have a daughter, and I always think that the segment that is so difficult to attract is the young people. They're really difficult people to no, it's true. It's difficult to attract them, but I think they're brilliant. They're bright. A lot of them are bright. It's difficult to make them focus. And to read your book, and my book is really, really thick. So I'm always flattered the fact that, we want to invite you to our high school. That's the height of the whole tour for these 3 years. And I think one sentence that I always like whenever after our discussion is always that after this, and then I want to start reading the other book that has to do with 65, because a lot of them, even the Indonesian high school students also said that, before I was always afraid to read Bapak Pramudia's books or, other books that has to do with 65, but now after reading your book, now I want to buy the tetralogy. And that really makes me happy because at least it sort of make them interested, because we don't have a history lesson yet that has been revised by the government. Thank you.
Leila. All the speakers maybe should sit up front. Do I have your permission for 10 minutes? 10 or 15 is okay? Oh, that's good. So we have permission from the convener, or one of the conveners, to extend the session because we started late and all that. So we'll have 15 minutes for discussion, which is... I'll sit down after I finish yakking. So we'll just open up this session for 3 questions first, I think. And if we get a chance for a second session, then we'll do it. If not, that's it. Okay, so 3 people. Barbara, and you were the convener.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Silakan. Ya.
Terima kasih.
Saya sangat terkesan dengan kegiatan perempuan itu ya, dan ingin tanya bagaimana dengan bapak-bapak, bagaimana dengan lelaki, ada juga kegiatan dengan mereka. Saya bayangkan mungkin banyak yang sudah menikah, barangkali belum sedang. Tapi ada juga kegiatan
What about, are there any activities for the male survivors, since the keeper deals with the females?
Langsung ya.
Silakan.
Oke. Terima kasih Bu Barbara. Iya, sebetulnya kan kiprah perempuan ini kemudian ada karena sudah ada komunitas laki-laki, dan ketika perempuan bergabung dengan komunitas laki-laki, mereka lebih diam kemudian, makanya kemudian terbentuklah Kiper karena mereka ingin membuat komunitas yang membuat perempuan bisa berani bicara.
Okay, so the answer is there's already a community for male survivors. Yeah, and that's why there was a need for the establishment of Pipit.
Tapi ketika kita Kiper ada teater, itu kita bersama bapak-bapak yang juga punya kemampuan yang sama dengan kesenian. Jadi kita bergabung. Ketika kita bermain teater ataupun drama kemarin itu kita ada juga korban yang laki-laki.
So when they have cultural activities like theatre performances, they do collaborate with the male survivors in conducting the performances.
Saat ini di Jogja ada satu kegiatan bapak-bapak yang masih berlangsung sampai saat ini, namanya Sambung Rasa, Sambung Roso. Jadi dia kumpulan bapak-bapak, dan ketika setiap kita kegiatan misalnya Natalan bersama atau Syawalan kalau Idul Fitri, biasanya Kiper dan Sambung Rasa bergabung.
So there's a male organization called Sambung Rasa, and during Christmas or other festivities, usually Kiper and Sambung Rasa get together. Okay. All right, second, that was Rachel.
Yeah, I just had a quick question for Vannessa. I hope I didn't miss it at the beginning of your talk. So with the symposium, how were people invited? How closed was it? What sort of coverage did it get? Was there any alternate voices coming through?
Okay.
It is.
It's on. Okay, technology. Thank you, Rachel. I think with the symposium, in his opening remarks, Kiki Shanakri said they had invited 49 organisations, and 49 organisations were represented at this event in Jakarta. But I don't think that there were as many as 49 groups actually present in the room. Judging from what I could see in the footage, there would probably would have been about 200 people in attendance. And Kiki Shanakri also said, we invited 49 organisations, but I think not everybody got the invitation. A lot of them got lost in the post and didn't get there on time. Sorry about that.
The military's never heard of email.
That's true. It had to be very formal. And if you go to the symposium website itself, there's a whole range of organisations down the bottom that had given their logos to be used, so you can also have a look at which organisations there were. There were student organisations, Islamic organisations. I did not see any other religion that was represented at the event itself, other than Islamic groups.
What sort of variation?
How were they invited?
Yeah, that's it. But just was it like a lot of very distinct type of organisation, or a bit of variation?
I think it was a bit of the people here could also answer this too, if you know. It was very ad hoc in terms of how the organisation came together. I think it was ad hoc in the sense that it was just going to be founded just for that particular symposium, but that I think these organisations have a history of working together, and that's what's also evident in this. And some of the same names and the same people who had testified before in other events in the way that they have testified have come forward again to say the same things. That Sri Edi Sasono, for example, who's an economist, was saying my father was a victim in, I think, 1948. And so it's a lot of the same people who were involved in these forces. But
Leila.
No, I just wanna make sure, because there were two different symposia. Yeah. You're talking about the second one, the so-called alternative symposium. Okay.
So
because there's one real symposium that has been initiated by the government, the Agus Wijoyo one. That's the one where the April one where all the victims also talk, and that was the first time the victims and the government met. And then that's the one that you're mentioning is the second, the alternative one, the ones that they're not satisfied because of this one, right?
Yeah, look, no, I just want to have it, sorry. I want to talk about that a bit because when Kate asked me to speak about this was about the counter symposium. So which is June in the military dominated symposium.
Exactly.
But as I started to research into it, I thought to myself, this isn't just a counter symposium to the April one. This is something else. This is actually qualitatively different to just saying, oh, we don't agree with what was said at that thing. Because even the theme had departed away from just, countering what happened in April, but it said, the theme had the title, Protecting Panchasila from Threats and so on. And it was on the 1st of June, which is the, the day of the founding of the Panchasila, until the 2nd of June. So that's why I didn't mention, cut it out, references to the April symposium, because I don't talk about it as a counter symposium, because I think it's something more than that, than just countering the April one. This is, I think, a fresh approach to try and really go hard on this thing of reintroducing the role of the military as a central part of protecting Indonesia from threats to its territorial integrity and ideological integrity of the Pancasila. So that's why I don't talk about it as a counter symposium.
Because I thought because you mentioned symposium, I thought it was the April one. Yeah.
All right.
Okay. Now it's clear. It's clear. Yeah. Because we didn't take that one seriously. Sorry.
My question is for Leila mainly, but of course it's open to the panel. It's very simple. Maybe some people have asked you this already many times. But what's your take on Kurniawan's Eka's work and maybe the international reception of his work as compared to yours?
I really like his. I really. I've read his book long time before the international, because he's been writing Cantik Itu Luka 12 years ago. So before everybody else I've read it. But I still prefer Manusia Harimau instead of Cantik Itu Luka. Mainly it's really personal, because I cannot really, I'm not strong enough to read or to watch rape scenes, and Eka is very brutal about it, and I think he purposely did that. I talk with him like, why are you so graphic about the rape scenes? And obviously I do understand that the woman in Cantik Itu Luka, or Beauty is a Wound, it's a symbol of Indonesia, and I get that, raped by Japanese, Dutch, and then during New Order. So I get that, but still he's very, very graphic about it, and it's just because I cannot go through that. That's one of the reasons too that in my work that I cannot go through rape scenes. It's always aftermath. And but I love Man Tiger, and that's also one of the reasons I think that Man Tiger won a lot of awards. Well, that's what I think, and I think he deserved it. I think he deserved more. I would want Man Tiger to win the Booker Prize, but So yes, I'm one of his friends. Yeah.
Okay, we have time for two very quick questions, if you're ready. Okay, 1, 2. Very quickly, please.
Yes, this is just about Pancasila. I must mix with a very limited group of people, because all the people I know think that post the New Order, the New Order interpretation of Pancasila has become a bit of a joke. People would mainly laugh about it. So I'm a bit surprised that people are trying to revise it as something that should be taken seriously.
This is to Vannessa, right?
Yes.
Second question.
My question is for Leila. So how do you see novels, and especially your novel, open up the discussion with the younger generations about the history of 1965?
Okay, David, thanks. On the Pancasila, yes, okay, you might find it surprising that the military is trying to do this. But on one hand, I think that the Pancasila is on one hand discredited because of the way the New Order interpreted it really narrowly. It is on one hand, but on the other hand, I think for some people now, the Pancasila is seen as a guarantee of diversity and plurality. And so that people do start to turn to the Pancasila again because they think that the space in Indonesia for democracy, for expression, freedom of expression, well, that's narrowing because of certain forces that want to silence the kinds of debates, that are going on. So I think it is getting, it's some of that status back. People saying, well, how can we use the Pancasila in ways that, are no longer the way it was under the new order?
The irony is that it's supported by the Islamic groups that were suppressed by the imposition of Pancasila in the 1980s. I mean, that's one of the ironies. Okay.
Can I say something sedikit saja about Pancasila too? I agree entirely with Vannessa that it's because the way that New Order used that. But also in my essay for Australian Indonesian Center, that I mentioned a little bit that in 17 August 17th, 1945, when our founding fathers were debating about this Pancasila, the original thing that there was supposed to be 7 words in the Ketuhanan Yang Maha Esa, the first God, we believe in God, or believe, okay, because there's supposed to be comma and then practicing
Sharia,
obligation to practice Sharia for Muslim. There's supposed to be those 7 words. But then there was a big debate between, among the Christian scholars and the Islamic scholars, and then finally, all the founding fathers, including Muhammad Hatta, decided that no, it has, we're going to cut that off. And I think that's very important. And that's why a lot of people like me, I would take it seriously, because that's what we want. We want a diversity of Indonesia. But of course, during the New Order, we kind of like, oh my God, So it's actually about attitude, it's attitude. Yeah. Sorry. So now, your question, it's like I mentioned. I think the young readers are very important to me, because they're the ones who's gonna continue and maybe redefining Indonesia, if I want to, to make it in a bigger picture. I'm very concerned that history is not revised yet in our curriculum. I was very surprised. I was very happy, like a lot of my other colleagues, that Hearman, who was a very famous historian, became the Director General of Culture. Yeah. And the first thing when it was announced, I texted him and said, so are you going to change our curriculum? Are we going to revise the 65 history? So and then there was a long discussion. He cannot really answer with one sentence, but I was really pushing, like, are you going to do this? Are you going to do that? Because I think that's one important thing that we have to do, to revise the curriculum. Thank you. So because that hasn't happened yet, and I don't know when is it going to happen. So one of the things that I could do is just by doing writing novels, and also by writing reports in Tempo. That's all what we could do. But I think it's very important for the government to revise the history.
Okay, thank you. So that was exactly 15 and a half minutes. Let's again thank our speakers. So Kate or Gemma, what's next on the agenda?
Yeah, let's reconvene. Well, at 12, close enough to 12. Okay, so that gives you 10 minutes, but we know that you'll add 5. So yeah.
Just next door. Just next door.
No, the library.
Sorry, diburu-buru.